Since the start of the war with Iran and Operation Epic Fury, some 400 U.S. soldiers have been wounded in the conflict. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said 90% of those suffered minor injuries and returned to duty. But some of those wounded soldiers are pushing back on that in a new CBS News exclusive. In the deadliest strike of the conflict, 6 soldiers were killed and more than 20 were injured in March when Iran hit a command post in Kuwait. Some survivors and their family members say there have been lapses in care, and they're accusing the military of downplaying their injuries. Chief Warrant Officer Rodney Behrman is one of those survivors. The 57-year-old's body was riddled with shrapnel in the March strike. CBS News reviewed his medical records, which showed he also suffered a concussion, hearing and vision loss, and damage to his lungs. The Army has classified his condition as not seriously injured. His wife told CBS News correspondent Jonah Kaplan those injuries are something her husband will be dealing with for the rest of his life.
They told me that my husband's injuries were classified as not seriously injured. He was treated and released back to duty.
Not seriously injured. Those are 3 great words for you.
That was the hope that I was hanging on to.
Jonah Kaplan joins us now for more. What are you hearing from the families of these wounded service members you spoke with?
Well, Lindsay, clearly there's a disconnect because when you hear those words, not seriously injured, you heard from Amy Behrman right there. Those are 3 amazing words to hear when you're so worried and stressed. For the Army, though, according to the military definition, someone who is seriously injured is a soldier who's at risk of dying in the next 72 hours because of his or her wounds. So military protocols, bedside manner, sometimes they don't mesh, but clearly there's a disconnect here.
So what does that designation mean for the future care these soldiers receive?
Well, a lot of it has to do also with not just about the designation protocol, but the kind of mess that it was after this attack. If you remember in our earlier reporting, what happened was you had this drone that struck this military compound in Kuwait, but there was only 1 ambulance there. Soldiers had to tend to themselves. They actually talked about triaging each other, putting on tourniquets and bandages, and then driving themselves to local hospitals. So some of these soldiers were treated in Kuwait, admitted to Kuwaiti hospitals, and then they got whatever rides they could on a military transport, not necessarily medical evacuations, to U.S. bases in Europe, and then getting back to the States. So classifications, paperwork, it all could have been different. But the point is, because of all those changes and maybe there wasn't so much synergy, by the time they got to the U.S., they had to advocate for themselves. And there was no real one primary care physician driving the bus.
And your reporting found that in several cases, these injured service members had been cleared for duty, but that actually meant they had active orders to recuperate from their injuries. Explain that to us, and what is the Pentagon saying about all of this?
Well, especially in this attack and the people who are at Port of Shuaibah in Kuwait, they were from an Army Reserve unit. So any time that they are in the Army or doing anything military related, they are active. And so if you are in a rehab unit, if you are in what's called an SRU, a soldier recovery unit, those are your orders. You're considered active. What we have been seeking clarity from the Pentagon about is when they say 90% of injured soldiers are back on active duty, well, what does that mean? Could they be deployed tonight, tomorrow? Are they game ready, so to say? Or are they basically encompassing all of those folks who are in those SRUs? Does that mean also active duty?
All right, Jonah Kaplan, incredible work. Thank you.